everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, whatever you fancy. I'm Laura Poppity, CCI's Program Director, and I want to thank you so much for joining us today. During our very brief time together, we'll be providing an overview of the CALI Catalyst guidelines and application. We'll offer some general application tips, and then we'll conclude with questions from the audience. If you're new to CCI, Center for Cultural Innovation, we're a 501c3 nonprofit grant-making intermediary that was founded in 2001. We're headquartered in Los Angeles with an office in San Francisco, and we have staff throughout the state of California and in the US. Our focus is on supporting artists and arts workers exclusively, which we do through business trainings and workshops, commissioned research, and grant-making programs. We offer a range of regional and statewide grants. Some are longstanding and others that are more ephemeral, and each has a different priority, such as supporting professional development activities, new work development, and creative entrepreneurs, all of which you can learn about through the funding section of our website. But the common thread across our programs is CCI's support of individual artists and arts workers, because unlike other grant-making intermediaries, we prioritize the flow of resources to individuals and not to organizations. And we can go to the next slide. What is CALI Catalyst? That's a great question. CALI Catalyst is a CCI grant program that awards unrestricted grants of up to $7,500 to California artists and arts workers who are on the front lines of affecting greater inclusion, access, diversity, and equity in the arts and culture sector. The program was launched very recently in 2021, and it came out of a moment when in California and around the country, individuals in the arts were taking bold actions to upend systemic inequities in the arts and culture sector, and doing so with risks to their jobs, social standing, and reputations. But the result of their actions had and continues to have profound impacts on the sector. So to help ensure that the momentum for this field-wide change continues undeterred, CALI Catalyst emerged to offer financial support in the way of those unrestricted grants, meaning these aren't project-based awards, nor are they meant to accomplish specific outcomes. Instead, they're intended to support the grantee in whatever way is helpful to them. And we're going to share some examples of what we mean by these bold actions and these change makers in later slides. And we can go on to the next. Who does CALI Catalyst support? Well, CALI Catalyst prioritizes support to the following: applicants whose bold actions, they have to have taken place on or after 2020, January 1st, 2020 or later, whose bold actions are upending the status quo that has held the arts and culture sector back from realizing greater inclusion and equity by tangibly helping underrepresented communities, including Black, Indigenous, people of color, LGBTQIA+, and people with disabilities, to gain more influence and power at industry-wide levels. It also prioritizes support to applicants who played a causal role in the change that occurred. In other words, these individuals decidedly influenced change at an industry level in the arts and culture sector. It prioritizes support to applicants who are of underrepresented communities, but if they are not, whose bold actions are in the interest of underrepresented communities and who are visibly moving the needle for these communities to have more inclusion, influence, and power in the arts and culture sector. Applicants are from non-metropolitan regions are also prioritized, and we consider non-metropolitan to be outside of the San Francisco Bay Area and Los Angeles County. And finally, the program prioritizes support for applicants who have not previously received CALI Catalyst funding. That doesn't mean that those folks are ineligible, but in a competitive round, we may prioritize first-time applicants. Next slide.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Barajas, Program Associate here at CCI, and I mostly support our grants team. Throughout our presentation, we'll be sharing brief profiles of previously supported grantees. First, on the slide, you can see our 2022 grantee, the Open Door Studio team, which is made up by Ted Zopolo, Daniel Schneider, David Idell, Caroline Murphy, Mark Gonzalez, Dylan Shushki, and Taku Johnson, led by Roxanne Trujillo. So together in Oxnard, California, they are shifting power to artists with disabilities and serving as a model for the proliferation of other public art spaces in the region of Oxnard, California. So as a response to the lack of gallery and public art spaces, only made worse by the pandemic and the shelter-in-place mandates, Roxanne launched a virtual art class that brought together members of the disability community and offers safe spaces. As the class gained traction, its participants began to envision a physical space where all local artists could create, showcase, and sell their work. On March 1st, 2021, the team launched Open Door Studio, Oxnard's only public art gallery fully operated by artists with disabilities, giving them both equity and decision-making authority. The gallery is also providing local emerging artists a much-needed platform to show and sell their work. So they're doing really amazing work. You can learn more about them in the full slate of 2021 and 2022 CALI grantees on CCI's website, where we have visual directories for each year's recipients. And you can find the link on the chat. So next slide. So CALI Catalyst will offer 2 open application rounds in 2023. So right now we're in round 1. Applications are going to be accepted from March 8th to May 3rd, 2023 at noon. So that's a little bit different from other organizations that have like a 5 p.m. deadline. Our deadlines are at noon, so keep track of that. And notifications will be shared on July 5th by 5 p.m. Round 2, applications will be accepted from June 1st until July 27th at noon again. Notifications will be shared on September 28th by 5 p.m. Applications will only be accepted via our CCI submittable platform, and applicants must create an account in submittable before they'll be able to access the grant application. You can access the application link on our website. So next slide, eligibility. So CALI Catalyst applicants can be individuals or teams of individuals. To be eligible for funding consideration, applicants, 1, must be artists or arts workers. That means arts administrators, cultural producers, culture bearers, creatives, cultural practitioners, teaching artists, or specialized technicians. Applicants must also reside full-time in California. And lastly, applicants' change-making actions must have taken place or commenced on or after January 1st, 2020. So the asterisk means that only 1 application will be accepted per team. That means that individual team members cannot submit separate applications to describe the same action. So teams are therefore encouraged to select 1 single team member to apply, and if funding is approved, this same individual will be the one responsible for fulfilling all of the grant requirements. Next slide. So here are some of the ineligible things that are for funding consideration. So organizations are not eligible. That means nonprofits, for-profits, fiscally sponsored orgs, individuals or teams of individuals who describe a change-making action that began or took place before January 1st, 2020. Individuals or teams of individuals who are requesting funding to support an organization. Also, individuals or teams of individuals who have a conflict of interest. That means family or financial relationship with the board, the staff, or directors of the Center for Cultural Innovation. And lastly, incomplete applications or applications with inaccessible, that means password protected, broken links, attachments. So if we cannot look at everything you provide in your application, unfortunately, we'll deem that as an incomplete application and won't be able to review it. And so to be clear, individuals and teams can work for an organization, be affiliated with one, but CALI Catalyst supports the individual who enacted the change-making work and not the operations of their organization. So next slide. So here we have Rashid Shabazz. He is another one of our 2022 grantees. He's challenging hegemonic, exclusionary public narratives in the city of Alameda. In 2018, he started a petition to rename Alameda's first park, the Andrew Jackson Park, which was named after the 7th US president who was an enslaver and an ethnic cleanser. He hoped his campaign would initiate a conversation about racism in public spaces and emphasize the need for comprehensive and transparent education. But the city took no action until the murder of George Floyd in 2020. Rashid remobilized efforts and formed Rename Jackson Park, a group that ultimately compelled the city of Alameda to rename the park. They chose the name Chochenyo, honoring the language of the local Ohlone people. His efforts have continued to inspire attempts all over Alameda to rename other parks and streams and streets that honor white supremacists, as well as a call for the incorporation of Native American history in school curriculums. Rashid remains committed to creative spaces and opportunities to expand the circle of stories, histories, and cultures discussed and represented in the city of Alameda. Next slide.
Thanks, Steph. Okay, I'm going to go over review criteria. So applications will be evaluated based on their ability to align with the following criteria. The first is impact on arts and culture sector. So for this criterion, we're asking, is the applicant's change-making action shifting entire sectors, such as the entirety of the museum or theater sectors, to move away from the status quo? We're asking, are there tangible and measurable ways that the applicant is helping underrepresented communities gain more power and influence? For example, through governance authority, causal changing of the guards, or shifting industry or regulatory policies and practices? And did the applicant play a causal role in the catalyzing change that was realized? And by causal, we're asking whether the applicant's role was seminal enough that change would not have occurred without their involvement. And just a note on this, that applicants whose actions directly resulted in tangible industry-level impacts will be more aligned with this criterion than applicants whose actions are described as having the potential for impact. And we'll talk more about that shortly. The second criterion, the intention to enact greater inclusion, access, diversity, and equity. So for this criterion, we'll ask, is the applicant's change-making action aimed at helping underrepresented communities gain more influence and build power in the arts and culture sector? And finally, informed perspective. Does the applicant have direct experience with the arts and culture sector, and are they of an underrepresented community? Next slide.
So next, I am honored to share more about another 2022 grantee, Piper Thomason, who is pushing for racial equity in culture via dance at local and field-wide levels. So Piper is a Black and Japanese queer female dancer based in Oakland, California. In December of 2020, Thomason published an open letter about how the pervasiveness of white supremacy culture in the dance field had manifested at the Shaw Anderson Dance Center, SADC, in Berkeley, California, a modern dance mecca for East Bay dancers. Piper worked at SADC for 3.5 years as the only Black admin staff member, often having to educate her team on racial equity issues, something that she wasn't being compensated for. After leadership recognized these efforts, they created the Equity Practice Advisor role, a temporary position co-designed with her. However, in November of 2020, SADC announced budget cuts, coupled with promises about the continuation of their DEI efforts. However, employees were offered reduced hours or layoffs with severance in exchange for signing an NDA. The Equity Practice Advisor role was not renewed, and staff felt that any promises of progress were not going to be met. Piper decided to accept the layoff without severance to be able to speak on her experience, willingly putting her career, our practice, and personal life at risk to call out the conscious and unconscious exploitative practices of an important organization. Next slide.
All right, the application. So the CALI Catalyst application collects contact information and basic proposal details, as well as asking a set of narrative questions that directly align with the review criteria. And before we go over those narrative questions, we're going to drop a link to the complete application preview in the chat, which I strongly encourage you to review in advance of starting your application. And now let's take a look at the questions themselves. By the way, responses are limited to 350 words each, which is roughly 3 to 4 paragraphs. So we first ask a very standard question, our overview question. Describe the change-making action, including relevant dates, the oppressive, unfair, or untenable circumstances that prompted action to be taken in the arts and culture sector, and the specific causal role or roles played by the applicant. So again, by causal, we want to understand how the applicant played a keystone role in the action. And you can think about this as, if you remove this person from the equation, the whole thing would fall apart. Next, we're going to ask you about intention. Why did you undertake the action? What were your expectations and what goals did you hope to achieve? Third question, impact. What was the actual impact or outcome of the action? In your response, we want you to describe the scale of impact on the arts and culture sector and to cite the tangible and measurable ways in which underrepresented communities gained power and influence. Remember, applicants who can point to their actions' impact in tangible and measurable, concrete ways will be more aligned with the grant review criteria than applicants whose actions are described as having the potential for impact. I should add that in some of the applications that we receive, folks talk about how actions resulted in an increased visibility around an issue. That's important, very important. But what else resulted that directly shifted power and influence to underrepresented voices? Our final question is about perspective, and we'd like for you to describe your direct experience with the arts and culture sector and indicate whether you as the applicant are of an underrepresented community. In your response, include the duration in the sector, roles played, communities supported, and any other factors that have informed your point of view. Because as we know, our lived experience influences and informs what we do in life. So it's very important. And we can move on to the next slide.
So in addition to the narrative responses, applicants will also need to prepare support materials, which include 1 to 2 page resume, CV, or bio that references the applicant's current roles or role in the arts and culture sector and summarizes their experience and activities in the field, and also up to 3 ephemera directly related to the applicant's change-making work. Examples may include relevant URLs, press, screenshots, or any photo video documentation that you may have. Examples should also demonstrate that the work was public-facing. In addition, you'll also need to provide 2 references who can attest to the applicant's demonstration of the review criteria and speak on behalf of the communities that the applicant is hoping to positively impact. References who are family, including spouses and partners, or with whom the applicant has an active financial relationship will not be accepted, as these are considered conflicts of interest. CCI will also call on the individuals in the field or of a competitive applicant's work so that the people directly meant to benefit will influence the adjudication process. Sorry, that's mouthful. And we will only contact references for applicants who are finalists for funding. Next slide, please. So the last grantee that I'd like to highlight today is Sarah Rafael Garcia, who is changing the arts landscape in Orange County through BIPOC Center and serving art spaces. So despite Orange County being home to over 3 million residents, of which more than half identify as people of color and a third as Latinx, most local arts organizations and businesses are white-led and white-serving, often relying on outside talent. So Sarah recognized the deep dissonance that exists in a region that is so culturally diverse, but often ignores its BIPOC arts professionals and audiences. In August 2021, in Santa Ana, California, Sarah established Crear Estudio, an art plus comunidad plus gallery space that centers BIPOC artists and experiences as a hyper-local approach to building cultural relevance and equity. Through Crear Studio and BIPOC Art Spaces, a digital archiving initiative, Sarah is offering artists of color a platform to work with archivists and present their work to a broader audience and gain the experience, connections, and visibility to advance in their careers. Next slide. So now we have just a few basic tips to help you with your CALI Catalyst application and your applications to other funders in general. So we highly recommend that you review all ephemera. So that means guidelines, FAQs, application preview, grantee directories, this webinar, which you can watch again. Also, be clear and to the point. So avoid responses that are overly technical or dense and abstract. Have a friend or someone else look over your application to see if any important details were left out or whether something is unclear, and reach out to CCI staff with questions. Please call us, email us. We're available at cali@cciarts.org or at 415-288-0530. And we highly recommend also leaving a voicemail so that we know what you're calling us for. And so now we can go ahead and close the slideshow. And I'll send it back to Laura.
Hey everyone. So we have a really generous amount of time now for questions from the audience. You're welcome to raise your virtual hand or to drop your question in the chat. I just want to point out that everything we presented in the slide deck came directly from, like, pretty much verbatim from the guidelines, the application preview, the FAQs, those visual directories of grantees, just to emphasize, reading through all of the materials in advance. And then certainly when you have questions, reaching out to staff directly, because that's what we're here for. And I know all of you probably have nuanced projects. CALI is not a one-size-fits-all kind of program. So we really look forward to and hope to speak with applicants so that we can understand your work better. And I see a couple, I'm going to switch back and forth from hands raised to questions in the chat. I'll go first to, I see Susan is first.
Hi, I recently was nominated for a Fulbright scholarship for a project that was going to be in Taiwan, but it didn't make it through the State Department, so I'm not going to be doing it. But I was wondering, would this be a grant that might be applicable for that project? It was to design, I was just going to give you more information. It was to design a bilingual teaching guide for the arts. And we were going to be working on Mandarin to English because Taiwan needs to be bilingual by 2030.
I would say, and for Susan's question and for others, I don't know that we can get all the details we need to make to give you a really informed response. Susan, I would say just off the cuff, if the project was motivated by wanting to shift practices in the arts and culture sector, it doesn't need to take place in California. It can take place anywhere, but as long as your intention is change within the sector, arts and culture, not any other sectors, not any other industries, and it's shifting power, it's shifting influence, then potentially there's a fit there. But it sounds like the project hasn't taken place yet. So that's where we might get stuck, because we want to know what the impacts were, and we want to know in very concrete ways. So feel free to reach out to us to talk more about your project.
Okay, thank you.
And I should just also point out, if anyone, I noticed in the folks who registered for today, a lot of folks wanted to know just, how do I apply for a grant? What are some tips and techniques? So I would encourage you to use this forum. We're encouraging you to reach out to us about anything and everything. So if we don't get to your question, know that we're here to listen to you. And in that case, if you have just a general question about grant making or funders, bring it on. So let's switch to chat. Susan, I think you were the one that asked about that. So Elizabeth asks, how do you define underrepresented? That's a great question. We define underrepresented as Black, Indigenous, people of color, LGBTQIA, and what is the last? There's one more. People with disabilities. Sorry about that. I should have known that better. And that's in all of our ephemera. So let's switch back to, I'm not going to pronounce your name correctly, Gautam.
Hi, yeah, so I guess, my question seems to be related to both Alicia Martinez's question and also Susan's question. So I quit my job in 2020 to write a language learning application designed specifically for like underrepresented communities, similar to Susan. And it's basically implemented. So I had my first demo of this language learning application in a school in Pasadena, and the population is like 70% minority. So basically, I mean, I would regard that as impactful, but it's kind of hard to measure that impact. And it's kind of an ongoing project that I'd love to fund. I'm completely self-funded, and I would love to receive funds to kind of basically continue to demo it for free. But I don't know if, my question is like, how do I go about measuring the kind of quote unquote impact of such a language learning, program? It's about literacy, basically. It's teaching kids how to read.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to lift up is that if your action is ongoing, that's perfectly fine. We would just assume that when you apply, there have been some impacts that you would be describing, that you would tell us about. And so I'm not really sure, because I don't know, that track particularly well. I think we could talk through some ways that might be measured. I think one thing that came to mind immediately was, is it having larger effects on literacy curricula? Like, is it influencing the way the curricula are taught, or how teaching artists are teaching artists affected in some way? So that's what I would be thinking about, is how has it continue to kind of reverberate out?
And this, I'll respond because it may apply to other people, which is that I would argue my particular project is like an innovative project, because basically I'm taking like blank text on a screen, and as you read it out loud, it visualizes the text as imagery and animation. So I'm kind of inventing a new medium. I would categorize it as like a public humanities or like a humanities project. So I think to answer that, I would respond in that I think it's innovative visually and creatively. So it's kind of changing the curriculum. Yeah, that would be my argument.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
I can see how you're framing it, and that answers my question. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And please reach out to us more to talk and discuss this further. So we have a question in the chat. Alicia Martinez. I have my Ballet Folklorico, El Valle St. Helena in Napa County. I have 13 years with my group, which is comprised of kids and adults, as a teacher and director. The classes are free, and I don't have any pay for my hard work, and I don't have help from any organization. How can I apply as an individual or a team? Thanks. Oh my gosh, Alicia, you're preaching to the choir. I mean, there is not enough funding for the arts nor for arts education, and you're in Napa County.
Yes.
I think we should talk offline and hear more about your Folklorico group, the impacts that it's having in Napa County, because I also want to lift up the fact that change is not going to necessarily look the same everywhere in California, or bold actions aren't going to look the same everywhere in the state of California. They're going to look quite different. And that's why we, CCI, intentionally does not define that. We couldn't. We would just be making it up. I think the best way to illustrate what we're looking for would be to look at just the range and the spectrum of grantees that we've supported over the last 2 years. So Elisa, I would love to talk to you more offline, and also think about some resources that you might look to support the arts education that you're providing. I don't know where, I think where that prop, whatever it is, but that's in school. But I would think maybe your local arts council maybe California Arts Council might be coming online with some opportunities. And we can think about some other arts education funders that are focused on the North Bay.
Okay.
And we also, CCI, we have Investing in Artists opportunity, which supports artists working in the performing arts and media arts. That grant is coming online this summer, and it's to support your development of a new work. So if you are choreographing or building a new work, that might be an opportunity for you as an individual artist as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
And next we can go to Marjan.
It's Martian. I
Martian.
had a question, but the grant that you just spoke of, the media and performing one, is that different from the LA County one that's coming out next week?
Yes. So Investing in Artists is only going to be open this year to Napa, Solano, Sonoma, and Marin County individual artists. The one that you're referring to is only open to LA County performing artists.
Okay, got
And
it.
it can be to support, and the LA County is for folks to develop new work, to document work, or to present work, new or existing.
Okay, thank you. My question was more general, like, is this more of a fellowship or award for past actions that have been taken, or do you also want to hear about planned ones as well? Because I got the sense that you wanted to hear about past ones and the impact, but I wasn't sure
exactly.
Hear about like the future trajectory.
Yeah, we want to hear often what we've, and this isn't across all of the grantees that have been supported, but often folks will talk about, you know, this is what happened. These were the results. This is what changed or the impact that was affected. And I also happen to be doing this, or I have these plans for the future. It's not necessary, but occasionally it does come up in someone's application. But what we're focused on is what was that thing that you've done or are doing that you can tell us about that has had impacts. So let's switch to chat. I want to, this is from Keiko. I want to apply on behalf of my theater company. We have 3 co-founders. Sorry, there's an emoji getting in the way. Would I represent all of us? Although we are all 3 artists, would I respond as an individual? I would say if the action was enacted by the 3 of you in fellowship with each other, it sounds like you're a team and you would act as the lead applicant. So the funds would, you would apply as a team. I will just point out that we do have a disclosure that we don't do due diligence on team members. We assume that what you're telling us is true, is authentic. So if you're representing a team, we're not going to look into other team members. We're just going to assume that that's the membership of the team.
Oh, so I also
Go ahead,
I raised my hand too because so we started a theater company in 2020, like at the top of 2020. Great time to start a theater company. But we are an Asian theater company, basically like using traditional Japanese folkloric forms and mixing it with contemporary storytelling. So it's an ongoing thing. We're trying to employ more Asian actors in the Bay Area. There are very few Asian theater companies up here, but there are 3 co-founders. And so would I represent our company or the work that we have done as a team?
Yeah, I would say the 3, you 3 as individual artists. Yeah, that's what we would center is your work. And the vehicle perhaps is the company, but we're looking at your work as individuals.
Okay.
So, well, let me unpack that for you. I started at the top by talking about CCI supports individual artists and arts workers, right? Often grants, as you know, they flow to other nonprofits or fiscally sponsored organizations so that individuals never even have a chance to apply for grant funding. Or if they do, it's through, they get the trickle down from the organization. So it's really important to us that we're not just supporting another organization. We understand that people are affiliated, people show up in many different ways, have many different roles, are associated with organizations, but we're really invested in the individual, in the person who is the backbone of the organization.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay. So Lior asks, I'd like some clarification on the line between applying as an individual who works with a nonprofit versus applying in support of that nonprofit, particularly if oh my gosh, can someone else read this? If part of the bold move was starting a fiscally sponsored organization to benefit underrepresented folks, but that organization is not the entirety of the work.
I can explain a little more.
Oh, sure.
In early 2020, or at the start of the pandemic, really, I was part of a bunch of folks, queer and trans folks, that came together and started an art collective. And that art collective, as a team, has done lots of very incredible work for trans artists in California. And I'm wondering, eventually, just recently, part of that collective, not the entirety of the collective, but part of that collective became fiscally sponsored to further its work towards reaching more queer and trans artists. Part of the collective is still for-profit, business focused, and bringing other queer artists in. And I'm kind of wondering where the line on that is. Since we literally just got the fiscal sponsorship last month, and it's all very new.
Congratulations.
So thank you.
Yeah. And we understand why you would do that, right? Because then you can pursue more funding opportunities, which is also problematic in how philanthropy works. Like, we should work outside of those confines. But I digress. Let's talk offline, because it sounds like the genesis was around just the individuals and their work and their intention. And I should say too, like, we're also, we're kind of agnostic as far as how funds are received, because we understand that folks have different financial circumstances. So if you need a fiscal sponsor to, say, receive the funding for tax purposes, we can work with you. Or if you're a team and you don't want to, and you're the lead applicant and you don't want to receive the bulk of the funds, again, for tax purposes, we can work with you to structure payments that support you and whatever your needs are.
Thank you so much. I'd love to talk online. I have just one more clarifying question. If I'm applying as an individual, and part of my recent history, my past, is that I've created this nonprofit, but I'm applying for the funds for myself as an individual, can I talk about the fact that I've just done this if I'm not giving the funds directly to the organization?
I suppose, I think I would just need to know more details.
Okay.
I mean, what we don't want is someone, here, let me give you a clear example. We don't want someone coming and applying to support a DEI program at their institution, right? Because that organization, that institution can fundraise on its own, versus the individual who's taking, by their own, they're taking their own initiative to right some wrong, to shift power, to correct some systemic inequity in the sector. They are, as an individual or in fellowship with others, are doing that by their own free will. And they've taken maybe financial risks, personal risks, professional risks to do that. That's what we're looking for. So that's the aversion to organizations, is that we don't want funds to just flow right back to organizations where they often go, right? This is about the people.
Great, thank you.
Lakora?
Hey, yes, I think that's so great that it's about the individual and not organizations, because we all know how that goes. So thanks for that clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just want to say hello. My name is Lakora, And this is more of a technical question for the application because I'm a newcomer to the organization, but I would love some clarity on the role. You guys broke down, well, what's your role? Is it individual? Is it cultural producer? And I'm like, cultural producer. Could you break that down for me? Like what do you mean by cultural producer? Because I do produce, but I'm also the artist. So I wasn't sure.
Oh, yeah, that's very intentional. So when we talk about artists and arts workers, we also want to cite the many ways that folks might identify in the arts and culture sector, because not everyone thinks of themselves as an artist. So, for instance, a cultural producer is someone who is involved with doing just that, producing cultural arts and cultural events and programming. A cultural practitioner is furthering the practices of a particular culture. A culture bearer is extending practices from their culture and promoting them and making them, carrying on traditions. A creative is sometimes more associated with, help me out, like design industries. So however, we cite all of those different roles so that however you identify, you see yourself in the guidelines, and you don't necessarily see the word artist and think, well, I'm not that.
Got it. I see. And going back to Martian, he mentioned something about, the future grant that's coming up, but I wanted to know about media, because media is a form of art, and I'm wondering with film, with this program, is that something that you all see as something that is approved to be a type of art in a category?
And that's another thing about CCI. We are totally agnostic about discipline, career stage.
Okay.
So we serve everyone. If you're in the arts and culture sector and you're an individual, we like you. We love you. However, some of our programs do support only specific disciplines, and investing in artists is one of those, and it supports the performing arts and the media arts. And this year, 2023, it's only open to 4 counties in the North Bay: the Sonoma, Solano, Napa, and Marin.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And you guys, that's good.
But message us if you need leads or you want to talk more about other opportunities.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you all.
We have Dawn.
Yeah.
I have a question. Sorry. So Dawn asks, hi, I have a large scale art installation project that focuses on connecting and uplifting Asian American and Pan-Asian communities, and through celebrating our heritage. I have not built this project yet, so I was wondering if you might be able to share a bit more about what you're looking for in terms of tangible impact for the application.
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, you tell us, because we couldn't possibly know what the tangible impacts might be. I suppose where we would start is, what are you responding to? What are the circumstances or conditions that are exploitative or inequitable or extractive, or, the arts and culture sector? What are you responding to? What do you want to shift? What do you want to change? And how will this work do that? So then, you have to do the work to know what its impacts are. I hope that's helpful. And just saying it for the millionth time, talk to us. We can talk through all these things offline. Stephanie, can you help me out? Who should we go to next?
Leah should be next.
Hi, thank you. So the action that I'd like to apply for on behalf of a team of individuals is it's like 5 or 6 out of 10 staff artists in a nonprofit organization, which is an arts organization, but the action was restructuring the organization to go from a traditional top-down hierarchical, like you have the founder at the top and it trickles down, to a more horizontal collective model. So I'm curious if that is going to disqualify us, because we're going to be able to show the measurable impact within our organization, but I'm not sure how we're going to be able to show a measurable impact in our sector, just other than like being an example of such an organizational structure.
Yeah, I would say that's fantastic that you're, taking on that probably really emotional work and, labor of shifting that culture in your organization. And you said it. We would want to know, like, okay, you've done this. How is it? How are you affecting other organizations to do that very thing? How are you shifting that hierarchical structure amongst other organizations? Because we would be so curious to know and see and understand that. So that's what I probably would
I
look
think
for.
we should spend the majority of that word count that we have on that and not spend too much of that, response real estate on like how it affected our own organization. Like, is that going to be the entirety of what you're looking
because that'll seem too insular, right? So yeah, it impacted your organization, but how did it reverberate out?
Got it. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Jason in the chat who has a similar question. Could you speak more on what you envision as supporting underrepresented communities gain more influence and power at industry-wide levels?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's going to look different, depending on where you are and what you're doing. I think it's very specific to the action. And yeah, the circumstances that you're responding to, I think a great way to see the spectrum of what that could look like, again, would be to look at the 21 and 2022 grantees to see just the range of what that looked like for various communities around California. Thanks, Jason.
And then we have Rika.
Hi, Rika. We know Rika. Maybe Rika stepped away.
Sorry.
Oh, hey, Rika.
Hi, it's so great to see you all. So yeah, I've looked at this grant before and maybe considered myself ineligible, but I've been really enjoying the presentation today, and I'm curious. The thing that I'm imagining would best be eligible is the work that I actually did aligned with CCI and with the Arts Council, and that I continue to do as an individual outside of those organizations, which is working with other artists around seeking funding, encouraging them to apply for grants in order to have more representation, especially artists of color, artists who are elders, and artists who might be disabled, or all three of those things, which also includes the LGBTQ community, IA, etc. So I'm just wondering if that isn't, if that measuring impact could be interesting, but I wonder if that would be enough as an individual because that's the work that I found that's been the most engaging and the most satisfying and connecting the last 3 years, because it's such with all the upset. So does that make sense? I'm just curious.
Yeah. And just for the folks on this call, Rika helped CCI last year for the 2022 round of Investing in Artists when it was offered to Santa Clara, San Mateo, and Santa Cruz artists. Our network, our outreach is only so big, so we enlisted community ambassadors to help promote the Investing in Artists grant opportunity to artists in the area. So Rika helped in Santa Clara County. And so Rika, I would wonder a few things. One is, I would be really curious, like, are you, and you would have to, let's talk offline, but I'm thinking just a few things that come to mind is this influencing philanthropy in the region? Like, is it bringing attention to the fact that certain communities are underrepresented in their applicant pool? Or is it doing what you pointed to, which is it's kind of righting a wrong in the area, right? Which is getting the word out and supporting people to pursue these opportunities. So I think we would want to think about like, what's the landscape? What is this responding to, and what has been the impact over these few years? Has it amount, and especially in Santa Cruz, which is, you know, yeah, we would just want to know like what did the environment look like? How have things shifted in the arts and culture sector? Like maybe as a result, like more things are offered in other languages, or more ambassadors are enlisted, or this or that, in addition to more people applying.
Okay, that sounds good. And I think I could reach to the organizations that tap me for that measurable stuff, but I also know that not enough has been done. And so I continue to do the work, regardless of my affiliation with an organization as an individual, because I'm like, oh, there's still really a need for this. Many people still don't know about these grants opportunities. So, but I'd love to talk to you offline, and thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm also trying to answer questions in the chat. So Natalie had a question that I'm trying to answer in the chat, but maybe it would be a good, it's a good question to talk about, I think, generally. So they're asking, I'd like to throw my question in the chat. My name is Natalie from San Francisco based. Currently run a figure drawing group called Sketchboard Co. that hires trans, intersex, and BIPOC art models with a living wage. That sounds amazing, by the way. And we have been around for 10 years and recently started as an NLC. We have plenty of tangible events and photos, but hope to do trans anatomy classes, pay for artists to teach. Is this something I can apply for? Is this something that I was writing in the chat, is that CALI Catalyst is not a project-based grant, meaning we're not necessarily looking, again, everyone's doing amazing work, but this grant in particular is not meant to support individual projects that you're thinking of doing. This is about actions that have taken place where impact can be measured. And so again, we can go over individual this offline, which we're happy to do. But I think the key thing is like CALI Catalyst is not it's not a project-based grant. Laura, do you have anything to add?
Just to say that I thought the question was going to go in a different direction, because I thought it was going to be like, if your work has been aimed at changing the industry standard of hiring trans, intersex, BIPOC art models, and changing the industry standard of paying them with a living wage. Like that is something that that's where my ears kind of perked up. And you know, how have you been, aside from just doing that work, how have you tried to influence the industry to take on that practice? That's where I thought the question was going, because that would be like very much in the spirit of CALI Catalyst.
Hi, I just wanted to chime in. Thank you so much, first of all, I really appreciate it. And secondly, I guess I should have, Laura, the way that you actually worded my question would be, I guess, like another way I would look at like trying to apply for this grant, because that's what we've pretty much done. We've done like trans anatomy classes. We're doing, we did like a marathon where we hired just trans and non-binary folks. The other organizer is also trans too. So I like, we have a bunch of like intention of expanding what we're doing, and and that's like what I'm really interested in, and not just like I guess I should have said like project based. And thank you for clearing for that for me, Stephanie. But yeah, Laura, the way you asked it is probably the way I should have asked it.
Yeah, because it sounds like that could be, you know, if there is, because I don't know how, you know, arts classes are run these days, but if there is this norm of not having, say, trans models in anatomy classes, and you have been effective in shifting that norm and shifting that culture in the sector, we would really want to hear about how and to what degree and scale, and yeah, because these are the directions that the arts and culture sector should be moving in and moving towards. I see that we have just a couple minutes left. So we'll take, I think, 1 or 2 more questions, I think.
There's about 2 more left.
Oh, okay.
Okay, sorry, more questions in the chat. So I think the next one would be this one. Okay. Hello, my name is Chinello. I hope I'm not mispronouncing that. And I'm hoping to get a better understanding about eligibility. I work with an artist to offer classes in alternative and experimental methods in ceramics, and we offer scholarships for Q, BIPOC, and we hope to provide more opportunities for financial support for our students by applying for funding. Would applying as an individual for more scholarships in the coming year be reasonable, or would it be considered ineligible?
We wouldn't really be interested in knowing how you would spend the money per se. It's more about what is the work that was done or is ongoing, and what have been the results or impacts of it, and how has it shifted currently entrenched and problematic practices in the sector. So, I mean, that's wonderful that you're seeking funding for that, because I'm sure there probably aren't a lot of avenues for it. So that's where we would go with that question. And yeah, not ineligible. I would say we don't necessarily think of things as ineligible, but more just outside of the scope of the program. And that's another reason why we don't offer feedback like we do with almost all of our other grant programs, because we're not looking at grantsmanship, how persuasive you are, or quality of work samples. No, it's about alignment with the criteria. That's it. Just the alignment with the criteria. And so if what we do instead, in lieu of feedback, we talk with people, we just go through the guidelines, because we find that those one-on-one conversations are where we can lift up, like where there was, questions or things that needed further elucidation. And I just want to plug quickly that CCI produces a monthly newsletter, and I really hope, if you aren't already subscribed to it, that you do, because we share out a ton of resources, including funding opportunities from other organizations every month. We offer business trainings and workshops, and then we ourselves have various opportunities throughout the year.
So we are at the 1 o'clock mark. There was one question pending, and I saw one more pop up. So I don't know if you want to take one more, and then we respond to folks after with the remaining questions we can't get today. Just want to be respectful of everyone's time for joining us today for the full hour. So let me know how you'd like to move forward.
Let's just take the questions that are remaining offline, because as we said, we want to talk to you. So we're gonna talk to you. We're gonna be in touch. So we'll save the chat, and we'll get in touch with you or reach out to us. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us for the last hour. This was great. And we hope to see and talk to you. And thanks for being in community with us today.